All right. Morning, everyone. We are about 5 minutes away. Appreciate you joining us this morning. We'll be starting right at 10 o'clock in about 5 minutes. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the webinar. We'll be starting in about 3 minutes.
Bruce,
Yes, sir.
is there a reason I'm blank? Oh, I see. Yeah, there is.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. I'm glad I checked that. I thought it just because I wasn't talking. There we go. Have I met Sean?
I don't think so.
How you doing?
Yeah, nice to meet you by Zoom.
Yeah.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. Morning, everyone. We'll be starting up in 1 minute. Well, good morning, everybody. I know we'll have a few more people signing on shortly, but we'll start getting underway here. Thanks for attending our webinar for our members on an exciting new development we are excited to share. An app that hopefully will help people comply and save money, time, and claims costs over time. So we are recording the webinar. You'll be able to come back to it. If you have questions or comments, please enter them as we're going along, and I will bring them up to whoever is speaking at the time. And if technical issues arise, please contact our management company who takes care of all our administration for housing contractors. And Sean McDonald, one of the partners, is pinch hitting for Deneen Wolf this morning. And if you need to contact Sean with any technical difficulties, his email is Sean, SEAN, at McDonaldAMC, McDonaldAMC.com, or 916-206-2021. 916-206-0021. All right, we have an exciting presentation. Most of you know Kyle Kring and Carrie Kramer, and there's a question. Oh, there he is. Sean put it in for IT helper questions. There you go. With this app that Tom Manzo has developed with his team, we wanted attorneys we know and trust and like to give us a good evaluation of it from the attorney standpoint. And so we enlisted Kyle and Carrie. Most of you know them, and they unfortunately, Carrie is in a depot and can't join us today, but Kyle is here to offer his insight and respond to any questions as we go. And actually, Kyle, why don't we just take a minute while we're here with you? Tell us what's happening with you and Carrie in your business there.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Bruce. So at the end of this month, my partner Ken and I are going to be splitting up, and I'm forming a new firm with the attorneys that I've worked for the last 5 years, including Carrie and my son Tyler Kring. They'll both be partners at the new firm, and that's going to be effective at the end of this month. So we will be providing new information to you about our new contact information, new name. It's going to be Kring and Associates. It shouldn't affect anything. We intend everything to be a smooth transition. It's amicable. So I'll still do work for some of Ken's larger Korean employers, and he'll still do business formation work for me. So it's all good, but expect to receive something from us toward the end of this month. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the picture there of Tom Manzo. I've known Tom, I guess it's 7 or more years. We're very good friends. He founded California Business and Industrial Alliance. And what Tom brings is he is president of Timely Industries, a manufacturer here in Southern California. He got a PAGA claim, and like most of you, couldn't believe that California would allow this to go on. So Kabi has been a great proponent of PAGA reform all along, and Tom has been a very strong, important voice of opposition. We've worked together on a lot of things, but he is almost single-handedly responsible for on a federal level, Julie Su having the title acting Secretary of Labor in the Biden-Harris administration, because he talked about problems she had in California, and so she was never confirmed. Tom also is currently in a long-running dispute with Governor Newsom about whether the minimum wage increase for fast food industries has increased jobs, as the governor maintains, or has decreased jobs, as Tom maintains, and he's been on Fox News. And so Tom's a very strong, important voice of opposition to what goes on in California and actually federally. And I greatly respect and appreciate him. But he also, that's not all he does. He really wanted to do something to help employers comply with California's myriad of, labor law digest and everything else. And so he went to work on developing an app. And the app is what we're going to look at today. And the good news is Tom doesn't want to become Amazon with it. He wants to work just with a lot of good people, have good customer relationships. And so he started just working with his own members on this and has, I think, a couple dozen, working with it on it. And that's kind of what we've been working with him on, watching, how it works for everybody. And then he wants to slowly open it up to other parties. And we're, I believe, the first outside association he's opening it up to our members. Tom has graciously volunteered. We didn't ask for it. He'll give a royalty rebate back to Housing Contractors California for our members who sign up with him. So you see Tom's contact info there. If by the end of the webinar this morning you want to contact him and say, let's talk about maybe working together on this, there he is, where you or your attorney can contact Tom. And Tom, why don't you introduce Angel on your team, because he'll be obviously sharing information with us.
Right. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on and being part of this today. Angel Rojas, he's our go-to guy, office manager. He's been helping out with the app. He knows it inside out. We've got about 4 other people that are very familiar with the app, but we just have Angel on today.
How's it going, guys? Nice to meet you. My name's Angel.
Great. Thanks, Angel. Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit just so we understand how important we think this system is, both from my view as the risk manager, from Kyle's view as the defense attorney, for trying to protect and defend employers. So we'll go through what the app does. Tom will screen share and walk you through how an employee would work with the app. And then he'll show you how it is from the employer standpoint, the dashboard that HR people will have to work with, that I think is really good. We'll talk about what the attorney's role is. And the thing I like about this is your attorney will be doing attorney work instead of math, instead of all the things with PAGA claims, trying to put papers together that may or may not work or fit, or, they're just doing legal work for you. So their role is going to be much clearer and cleaner in terms of, you want your attorney giving advice, both procedurally, because that's one of the things this app works. But we know when people are trying to defend their, for instance, arbitration agreement or other parts of what the employee we thought complied with, it's how your procedures for getting the employee to sign on to that, or, was it valid or effective? We continue to see employers' arbitration agreements get, thrown out because they were procedurally ineffective. So your attorney will still have a key role in this process, but so much will be processed electronically and available electronically. This is where a great opportunity comes. So we want to make a note of, Tom doesn't have a real piece rate system in this app, but we think that the good news is Cabia owns the app. They do it all. So you won't have them saying we can't do this. And what we envision as our members start to, begin utilizing the system is that members will, and what we would encourage is people by trade, because a lot of different trades use a piece rate system, but they do it very similarly within the trade, but it's different between drywall or framing, plumbing, those kind of things. So what we envision potentially happening here is a group of the same trade would get together with Tom and Angel and sit down and say, hey, we want to do a piece rate system that's electronic from front to back. And we want it to be the same for everybody. Because as employees interchange and so forth, that's one of the values of this app is we can share information like training videos, the same training video between employers, so we can get employees, ensure they're trained quickly, and the dashboard will tell you when they've done that. So let's talk quickly about why this is important. On the one hand, we know it, but we just want to reiterate this is efficient. It saves time and resources. You'll see as HR managers, you'll be in control of information. You'll limit time chasing documents. You'll be able to get employees up to speed quickly. Onboarding is very easy, as you'll see. Field supervision, you'll be able to tell them, have the employee take 5 minutes and review this document and, click on it, give their electronic signature, and your HR person will know it's done, and your supervisor will keep doing what they're supposed to do. We know a lot of time gets wasted. And again, as we said, your defense attorneys will be doing much more legal work in both prevention and defense. We think we'll talk about that. And obviously this system will help you avoid claims of many types because labor law, and you'll see the employee themselves are making the entry, and there will be a lot less contest about, was the employee working off the clock? Did the employee actually put that time down? Cal OSHA training violations, that's a really frustrating thing we face over and over. Cal OSHA says, well, you have a signed document that you trained the employee, but when I talked to the employee, they didn't seem to remember much about it, or they didn't seem to know how to do it safely. Well, employees are intimidated being interviewed by a Cal OSHA inspector. And this way we'll have a video that we can show and say, the employee watched this video, here's the documentation of that. You can see they were fully trained. Other training violations we hope to eliminate, because I think that's another, again, potential future issue where we're sharing training videos so we get the very best training videos out there. And as we've talked about, one of the main things, maximizing your PAGA defenses. As we know, the PAGA reforms had some automatic help, but those employers who are proactive can just take themselves out of the target range dramatically. It appears PAGA plaintiff attorneys are focusing on two types of main PAGA claims. One is just pay stubs that are inaccurate, and they'll be like workers' comp attorneys, high volume of claims, low margin, but they'll make money because there will be a lot of people who won't have effective pay stubs. I think this app will give us effective pay stubs. And the other part is people wanting to go after the big players because they can still make multi-million-dollar PAGA claims for someone who has a systemic issue. And there's just a great opportunity to take ourselves out of the target range of where most plaintiff attorneys are going and make PAGA. It'll still be there, but it will be a manageable thing to deal with. And again, this app avoids many problems that I know many of you have, as you've looked at different systems. They want to charge you per employee, and we often have way more employees issue W-2s than we have our full-time group, and it gets too costly, or people say we don't do that. And again, Tom can really hopefully do that. Very good. So how does it work for the employee, Tom? I'm going to stop sharing so you and Angel can start sharing and walk us through.
Okay, just really quickly, I think one thing is important to really discuss is, why did we build this app? What led me to doing this? Well, when the company I was running got hit with one of these lawsuits, a big issue was always documentation. How are you documenting things? Do you have the right agreements? Do you have the right policies? And I've always been more of a operation manufacturing sales type guy. So I didn't like all of these kind of, rules and regulations. I didn't care for having all these types of agreements and sign things. And I mean, it drove me nuts. But when you realize, hey, if you don't have the right things in place, a PAGA lawsuit could cost you $1 million, or a wrongful termination can cost you a couple $100,000. You better buckle down and get everything right. And the approach that I took, and developers I've known for 20 plus years, when I talked to them about all this, the approach I took is I wanted to make it very, very simple for everybody to use, employees, employers, because if it's really easy to use, then people are going to use it, and they're going to have the proper documentation, and you're going to protect yourself and reduce those liabilities. And we've spent the last 2.5 years doing it. We've talked to a lot of attorneys. We've gotten a lot of advice. We know what other, attorneys are doing when they're trying to sue you. So we looked at it from a standpoint, how do we protect a small to medium-sized company? And we're growing this slowly because, we have the ability to develop it ourselves. It's all our own language. And if we have other customers say, hey, I like this, or this would be something you can add, or can we have this form? We can do it, and we get it done right away. So that's why we're doing it, is we want to help out the business community. And we're really looking at, again, sticking to smaller to medium-sized companies as their client base. And we don't want to, grow this too fast. We want to make sure we're doing it right, so we're taking care of everybody that is a client. So with that, I'll
and Tom-
share my screen. Yeah.
Tom, as we jump into that, why don't you just give people kind of an idea of the range of how the charges is, or operate, because I think that will give them good sign. Because you said small and medium-sized employees, and that means different things for different people. We have a lot of people in the 75 to 500 employee range,
Right.
and some even larger than that. So what are your basic, parameters
Yeah,
of?
hold on. Yeah. So I mean, the range is anywhere from $500 to $1,500 per month, depending on, kind of the size, the number of employees, and what you're using within our app. So we have a time clock system. We have a complete LMS system for training. So there's a lot of different components to our app, but I would say, that's about the range right now for anybody that's utilizing our app.
So
We've
if
got somebody that
had-
has about 300 employees right now, and I think we're charging them like $12.50 a month, and they're utilizing everything. They have full use of it.
And if someone, when you and I were talking, you normally don't charge for the install, but if somebody wants to do some custom things or add some of their own documents, you'd probably have some charge for that.
It depends, I mean, we look at everything, a little bit differently. So we have like a standard meal and rest policy, a standard arbitration agreement. We have some standard travel time policies. But, we have the ability, like if Kyle said, hey, this is the way that I want this agreement to look, then, we would make some changes and make sure that was taken care of for that particular client.
Okay. Go ahead.
So normally what happens is when an employee is hired, and they can actually fill out a job application online. And when they fill out the job application online, the employers could review it, and they could hire the person electronically. There's also a quick hire link, so they could hire that person through the quick hire link and do it electronically. And we actually did the quick hire links for a couple of clients that are in the construction industry, because they have a lot of people that just come to the job site and they need to hire them right away. And so they do the quick hire link, and then they go to and do all the onboarding. So new employees don't need to necessarily have an email address. You can hire them and they can have the login information. A lot of times we use the first name and whatever the employee ID number is. And everything is in English and Spanish. So if you were to hire somebody and the employee only spoke Spanish, then everything you would see would be in Spanish only. So normally when we do hire a new employee, you know, we instruct them to go to their profile first. And when they go to the profile, you can see these would be all the onboarding documents: meal and rest policy, cell phone agreement, travel time, arbitration agreement, notice to employee, direct deposit information, EEO-1, you know, the understanding on the handbook, a PPE policy, DMV if you need it, work opportunity tax credits, you know. So the I-9, we have all of this information there. So if you had employees that necessarily didn't need travel time stuff, then it wouldn't populate. If they didn't get a cell phone reimbursement, it wouldn't populate for that particular employee. So a lot of these things only populate for the employees if you want them to, or if you have those policies in place. And they become very, very easy. You know, on the meal and rest policy, if they're going to, you know, fill it out, my work days, you know, less than 6 hours, I waive my meal period, you know, more than 10 hours, I waive my meal period, and they just do a simple signature and they click submit. And what's nice about this is if there is going to be an audit done, and Kyle and his team say, hey, we want to do this audit and make sure that things are compliant, they would be able to log in and they could look at, hey, did they sign the meal and rest policy correct? Do they have a signed arbitration agreement? Do they have a lot of the policies and are they signed? And part of that, you know, is going to be really helpful as far as these new laws that are in place to reduce penalties for PAGA. So pre-notice, you can reduce your penalties to 15% based on audits and based on some trainings that we have built in to our system. So that just gives you an idea of when a new employee would log in. Now you have some other items in here. You know, here's our training module. So we can assign all kind of different trainings. We've got a lot of toolbox talks. We got the workplace violence training. We have harassment training. We've got for supervisors, the PAGA compliance training videos. So we probably have right now close to 50 videos in there, and we can continue to upload as many videos as we need. And if somebody watches the toolbox talks, they get a certificate for it. It stays in their documents file. We also can, we have a client that every 2 weeks, they watch a new toolbox talks, their employees, and then we have a report, and then they take that report and they turn that report into their general contractor. And it says, hey, you know, all of these employees viewed the toolbox talks on the app, and this has been working out great for them. They've been very, very happy with that portion of it.
And Tom, there was a question, is there an option for Spanish translation? But everything you've got is available in Spanish, correct?
Everything is English and Spanish. So what happens is when we sign the employee up in the profile, the details, we have to do it from the HR view, but you can click English or Spanish. So there's a lot of times people say, yeah, you know, my English is pretty good. And then they'll say, you know what, maybe I should take the test, you know, and Spanish. I'm more comfortable with that. Maybe I should have everything in Spanish. So it's just a quick change from the HR mode to do that. So here we have a few other things in here. The expense form, which I think is really important. And what ended up happening, what drove me to the expense form, is every single wage and hour lawsuit claims, they weren't reimbursed for expenses. This is a big help for that particular argument. So if an employee wants to claim that, we could say, hey, you have access to this app, you've signed all the agreements and policies, you can look at this stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And by the way, it also has an expense form. So if you did have expenses you felt you needed to be reimbursed, you could have just filled it out. And the expense form is just very, very, very simple, very basic. You add the items, you can upload, the pictures of the receipts, the manager, you could submit it, the manager would have to sign it, and then it could go to the accounting department. But I think too often, some of these things are missed, and it's really important. It's a lot of times, hey, I never got my mileage, and I was going to the hardware store to pick this up a couple times a week. Or, I took these people to lunch and I never got reimbursed for that. All of this is built in, and I think it's been very helpful, and a lot of our clients are using that now. So we also have missed break. So let's just say, for instance, within our time clock function. So you can use our time clock, you can use whatever time clock system you're having, but even within our time clock system or someone else's time clock system, let's just say somebody, misses a break. Well, what's the reason that they missed the break? And the employee says, well, it was my fault. I took it late. Nobody else held me up. Well, then HR creates a form, and that form they create, which is fast, is a missed break. And then we force that employee to, hey, sign the missed break and give the reason for it. Because it doesn't necessarily mean they took a late break, late lunch, missed a break. Doesn't necessarily mean, hey, we have to pay them that 1 hour meal penalty. You have to look at these kind of things. Well, it was their fault. We documented it, and we don't think we have to do that. So, but these are things also that strategies that you can discuss with Kyle and his team, because they might say, hey, yeah, maybe on these circumstances we pay meal premiums, maybe on these circumstances we don't, because meal premiums can start to add up very quickly. So we also have like request time off, shift change, so we want to keep track of vacation time, sick days, put in the request. So many times people put in paper request, or, how do we, say, hey, this person's out? Well, once their supervisor or manager approves it, and if HR is doing payroll and they want to produce a report, hey, X amount of people were on vacation, X amount of people took a sick time, what's going on, and you're more informed on where that employee is and what's going on with that particular employee. Is there any questions from the employee side of it? Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, clock in, clock out is a really big issue. So walk us through how that looks, and then it would be good for Kyle if you would check in, because we anticipate, it's always been a big deal. Do I have paper documents? And too often the paper documents just say, 7 to 3:30 half-hour lunch, and that's usually causes problems. We expect with the California Supreme Court soon to issue the Kemp versus Home Depot ruling that they're going to not probably allow rounding in any electronic timekeeping. So now and going forward, this is a big deal of how you do this, and that the employee themselves is clocking themselves in and out. Because, one of the things Carrie has talked about is employees say, well, I worked off the clock. Yeah, my pay stub is correct, but except for, I worked off the clock, when the employee themselves is clearly checking in and out instead of potentially someone else writing down their time and the employee signing it. So walk us through that. And Kyle, give us your thoughts on how this really important issue gets cleaned up.
So we have a landscaping company that's utilizing our time clock quite a bit. And a lot of their employees show up to the yard. When they show up to the yard, it's just a simple tablet. We put everything on like a Samsung tablet. So it's you know, not expensive, and it's not a piece of hardware you end up, getting anchored to. So we put the app and surface it on a tablet, and they will clock in, use their PIN number. Now their team goes out into the field, and when they go out in the field, we have them clock in and out for lunch. And then when they come back at the end of the day, they clock out at the yard. So, and the reason I'm saying is we have the ability where somebody could use a kiosk and then their phone and then back to the kiosk. We even have some circumstances where people are taking tablets into the field and utilizing it like a kiosk where you have multiple employees clocking in and out of that. But if you are just, clocking in and out on your phone, this is pretty much what it looks like. I mean, it's very simple, clock in, if there's a job name, hey, what's the job name? Time, am I in the shop? Am I in the field? We've got the ability to put in job titles and things like that as well. So again, we're trying to make it user-friendly to get the kind of data and information you would need on that. So many times, there's other companies that have other timekeeping systems, and a lot of times they're doing, geofences and once they say, hey, I'm not allowing, my location, then all of a sudden the geofence isn't working correctly, or they're clocking in and you were outside of the geofence. Well, where were you? Well, what happened? And there's a lot of these kind of questions and things that you come up with. And that's why we started doing tablets where it would be at the actual job site. So maybe like a foreman would be at the job site, people start to show up, and everybody clocks in at the tablet at the job site, and they clock in and out at lunch for the tablet at the job site. So you have multiple things that you can do with this particular app.
But if we, for instance, had a service tech who operates on their own, they can clock in on their phone, in and out, lunch break, and all that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, this is Kyle. I would just add, so the job name is really good, or job names, because they may work multiple jobs on one day, and that gets into the transportation to or from the second job after the first job. But this electronic timekeeping is really, if you have hourly employees, it's going to save you a lot of potential issues. The issue that would develop, which is the meal period, is, are you getting a timely meal period, and are you logging your time for that? And that's where Tom brought in the missed meal period form, which is critical. But it's a huge benefit, as opposed to we go into mediation, once a week, and someone will say, well, the times are all identical. With the tablets, we would just want to make sure that that's not another issue, that everyone's not being clocked in at 7 o'clock on the button every single day, out at 11:30, whatever it might be. But we really like the cell phone usage to log your own time, because that shows that the individual is actually doing it, as opposed to a job foreman. But it's
Right.
Definitely a plus, because you're not going to have the 7 11:30, 7 3:30 out numbers that are just consistent across the board, which no one could reasonably believe those are accurate.
Correct. And we've even added an end of the day attestation. So, at the end of the day, did you receive all your, required meal and rest breaks? Yes or no. If they click no, there's a drop down of potential reasons. And if they say, hey, I missed my break, and they clock out that way, HR, can look at on the clocking in and clock out. There's a report that'll say, hey, they said they didn't get their stuff. Well, let's find out why. We're going to know, like, the very next day why this person said no. And once we find out why, then we make a decision. Do we make the meal premium? Do we not make the meal premium? And then we have them sign the missed meal waiver, because that's the one thing I've learned as well. I mean, assisting a lot of our members and some of our HR clients, when you get to mediation, you know, if you don't have your ducks in a row and you don't have your information, you're not going to do well. But if you go to mediation and say, hey, look, you know, here's the clocking in, here's the missed things, here's all the attestations that are signed, you know, here's arbitration agreement, here's this, here's that, here's meal and rest policy, here's travel time policy. You're going to take the teeth out of those particular lawsuits right away. And that's just been my experience. And again, going back to how we're developing and building this app is based on those principles. What's it going to be like in mediation? Honestly, what's it going to look like? You know, when I started, you know, running things here at Timely, you know, we're trying to increase the productivity and the production. And a lot of times it was always at the start, you know, well, how do we get this machine faster? How do we do this? How do we do that? And I said, we need to reverse it. Look at the other end of things. What does the other end look? Well, what do you mean? How does it ship out? And then from shipping out, how does it get packaged? And I'm going to go the other way around. And that's kind of what we did here, as we looked at from the mediation perspective. How are you going to be the most well-suited and protected, to the point where somebody files one of these and Kyle gets on the phone with them and says, hey, you know, these guys got signed arbitration agreements, you know, everything's on time, we're not doing any rounding, you know, we got some attestations, we paid some meal premiums, you know, they've got signed policies, go knock on somebody else's door. That's our goal. It's that simple.
Yeah, and Tom, I just want to add that the importance of this is you may have a plaintiff that only worked for 2 weeks. And if you have the document showing, you know, it's not always 7, 3:30 in and out, you've got actual effective time records. That individual plaintiff, in order under the new PAGA reform to have a claim, must show an actual labor code violation. So eliminating that individual's labor code violation may be the end of the case, and you don't ever have a representative claim. So it makes it even more important. A lot of times we'll see cases where they're short-term employees that are the representative PAGA plaintiff. And if we can defeat that claim in arbitration, the whole representative claim goes away. We've had some really good case law over the last 30 days on that issue. So very, very important what Tom just said.
Yeah, really good. A couple questions here, Tom. One, are we required to pay a portion of the employee's phone bill if the employee clocks in and out on their personal phones? If so, how much? Kyle, you might.
Yeah, I can answer that. The answer is yes.
Answer
The amount is fairly nominal. We usually do an analysis for everyone, so they can prove that they did an analysis, but it's very limited. The time to run one of these programs is probably, yeah, I don't want to guess, but you know, $15 a week max, and often a lot less. But yes, you do have to pay them. And I actually prefer the individual phone for purposes of 2 things. One, authentication. If they're logging in from their personal phone, it's easier to authenticate that person, for instance, signatures or whatnot. Same thing, if they're logging in on their personal phone, they can't make the argument that their foreman clocked in for them on that tablet, because every foreman knows the employee's ID numbers, or, you know, could easily write it down on a sheet of paper. So we want to eliminate what we see to be potentially the next step or next arguments that we're going to be facing. But it's definitely much better when the times are not all consistent.
And to follow up on what Kyle's saying, with our app, we do track IP addresses. So if somebody, and only HR can see that. So when people are signing documents, logging in, doing this, doing that, we always have the ability to produce, you know, those reports or that data if necessary. So again, it makes the argument No,
Well,
I mean,
and-
there's no way. I mean, if they're using their own personal phone and we have tracked their IP addresses, we know it's them.
Yeah, and that's literally in the cases where we're prosecuting a motion to compel arbitration, authentication, especially authentication by DocuSign. DocuSign has a very active authentication process that they document. That's important, and this program has that too. At least as with regards to people that are entering their time from their own cell phone.
And even when they're, signing, the onboarding documents, we're gonna know times and
Right.
and when that happened as well.
Yeah,
So-
and the other thing too, I think you're saying, because we have the claims where someone says, there were 10 of us lining up to sign out.
Yeah.
So by the
Waiting.
time I got there, I lost 7 minutes of, time before I could actually leave the premises. If it is individual phones, I mean, it just adds to that. We have another question, and it can this be modified to meet our needs and tasks? And I think that's what we talked about, Tom, is you and Angel, you own this program. You can make any modifications that somebody wants. You obviously, you'll need to have some reasonable charge for changing things out, but somebody can
Well, we
really
even
modify
have,
this.
we
what
even
they
have
want.
like titles, so, let's say it's a prevailing wage job, drive time. Okay, this is my time for, and they could just have with a drop down drive time. I can have, welder 1, welder 2, framer, whatever titles, we have the ability to enter them in. So if there's different rates based on what the title is, we have the ability to provide that as well.
Okay, and then a question, does the program have the ability to interface with any accounting software such as Sage CRE 300?
It's right now, some of our like for instance, when they use the time clock system and they have ADP or they have Paycom, we have the ability to, create an export that's a simple export and then a simple import into that. So, we would have to understand more of it. I don't see it being a problem. We have one that we're working on right now that's their own internal program, and we're going to be, pushing all of the signed documents into their program. So, yeah, I mean, it's something we definitely can do. We don't offer it for that particular thing as of today, but I don't see what issue there would be with that.
You've been able to do it with any other systems that people have
Right.
wanted you to do.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's check real quick here. I'm going to share screen of so we just make sure we talked about how legal are digital signatures. Kyle, I think you've addressed. You feel pretty comfortable that if it's done right, digital signatures on arbitration agreements and those can be effective.
Yeah, in short, digital signatures are enforceable to the extent they can be authenticated. Authentication just means that the person that allegedly is signing the document is that person. And we have some thoughts on how to do that the best way, because we've seen these arguments on our motions to compel. We're currently dealing with a couple right now with outside labor providers. And it's just important, obviously, if you're logging in from your own cell phone, and you have that information, that's part of the authentication and would be accurate. There's probably other steps we can take if they're entering time, or if they're authenticating a document or signing a document from a tablet on a job site, which we would encourage people to use.
Yeah, another question, and we talked about this earlier, is piecework tracking and development. We talked about what we envision is that we would get individual trade groups, framers separately from drywall, from electricians and plumbers and so forth, because each of them seems to have different needs, but they're very common within their trade, and get a group together. And Tom could just, put a piecework, he and Angel can put a piecework program together that would be the same for everybody. Everybody could share the cost of development for it and make it pretty cost effective. And then as employees move between companies and or supervisors, everybody would be on the same piece rate system. We think, that could be done quite readily. So that's our one of our next steps to do. So let's see, you already talked about other languages. One question I have, Tom, sometimes throughout the state, we have an area where where there's a lot of employees not from south of the border, they're from an Eastern European country. If somebody wanted to pay for it, you could, and I'm sure with some of the AI programs today, you could add other languages if somebody needed that done.
We have, we did a one in Arabic, and we have and Kyle's probably familiar with them. It's a translation company that mostly works with legal teams. And so they have helped us with some of the translations, and that's what we would do. And I think one thing that's really, really important, because I have experience, with other software and software companies, and sometimes those experiences aren't that great. And the one thing that we're trying to do that I think will make it a little bit more unique than anyone else is we're going to be there to support you. So we're going to make sure you got all the right onboarding documents. We can work with Kyle. We can work with your attorney. We have a lot of the forms and that. We make sure we get everything set up. It's all buttoned up and ready to go. And then when you want to onboard the employees with some of the new documents and stuff like that, we have probably 20 tablets. And, myself, Angel, Andreas, Jose, we'll come to your location, or we'll meet at different locations, and we'll say, okay, let's all sit down. Let's get everybody signed. Let's get all the documents signed. And then we continue to hold our client's hand on everything. Hey, I'm sure you got this right. Do you need help with this report? So we put a lot into the front end, because if you don't, then it's not going to be successful. If somebody just says, hey, I'm going to hand you this software program, good luck, it's not going to work. And I know that from experience, and that's not the way we're going to do it. We are going to make sure you're utilizing all the different components because they're that helpful.
Great. The question of, can we activate a prior employee without having to onboard all over? You can take an employee to inactive and then bring them back. And between you and Kyle, maybe talk about, because I know that's a big deal. Onboarding, what a pain. If somebody works for us for 3 weeks, they disappear for 3 weeks, and then they come back and say, hey, we don't want to onboard them. How is the active, inactive feature work? And part of this is questions some of our members have asked, like, can the foreman on the job site activate an employee? Can they find them on the roster and just activate them, and they're automatically onboarded?
So if I could share my screen really quick, Bruce, I'd like to just show you really quick. So this would be from the HR perspective. So if I am the HR person or the owner of the company, or somebody that, wants to look at everything, that's available, this is it. This has everything. We have all the electronic documents. We have the non-interactive documents. We've got FMLA work comp stuff, our safety stuff, our training. People sign up I-9s. We have that separated. Job descriptions, which are really helpful. We have over 1,000 job descriptions in there, and you know, you can download that. We can tailor it to your job description. There's just, it's so robust. It's not even funny. So, but the employees here, we can look, and here's your dashboard, you know, okay, how many active employees do I have? I can have employees that are on a medical leave. How many temporary employees do I have? And if I were to go into this particular employee, and you can see the details, okay, does the cell phone policy apply? Are they a driver? Do the DMV stuff apply? Language, English, Spanish. So a lot of times in here, you know, it's this simple, right? Are they inactive, medical leave, you know, military leave? Am I going to delete the employee? And I'm telling everybody, you know, probably hang on to the employees, because we have unlimited amounts of storage space here. You're never going to utilize what we have for storage space. And all you have to do is just click inactive and save, and that's it. Now she's an inactive employee. So let's say 3 months from now, hey, I wanna hire Dolores. I need her back on the job. You know, you just go in and you click active. Now, if it's within the year, there shouldn't be any issues. You know, I would think they would not need to re-sign some of the forms and policies. If it's been longer than a year and things have changed, then potentially you would want to have them, you know, re-on board. But again, it's electronic, so it makes it really simple. You know, once we have everything loaded in your system, say for instance your handbook. So you have your handbook, and next year we got to make changes to the handbook. Well, we update the handbook, we load it in there, and then the employees sign and acknowledge, hey, we got the new handbook. And you don't have to print it. You don't have to chase people around. Well, I got to keep the understanding by the employee. I'm going to put that in my folder. You know, we're trying to take out all the paperwork where everything is completely done electronic. The goal is electronic, because then it becomes easier to get that information. You know, hey, I need to download all the onboarding documents. Okay, I'm going to download the onboarding documents, and, you know, we'll utilize those for whatever we need. You know, everything becomes stored into their document section. But so we
Kyle,
have
what?
Yeah, so yeah, this is a interesting, almost a loaded question that could be a seminar in and of itself. We have a little bit of we believe that it's important that you actually do terminate employees after 90 days of being inactive for a number of reasons. One, it could extend the statute of limitations if they don't get their final paycheck. It could be a final paycheck violation. It also could add to damages recoverable in a class or a POGA claim if they're still active. And I get the part about, you know, we could reactivate more easier, which is absolutely important. But we're strong proponents of not keeping a number of inactive employees, and that after 90 days, if they haven't worked on a job, that you actually terminate them. You don't have to terminate them from the system, but you terminate them for various reasons. Other things are like work comp, you know, those kind of things. It's kind of a loaded question, and we're big believers that it's important to not keep inactive employees on your payroll, so to speak, and that you actually do terminate them. The rehiring process obviously would be much easier. The critical question, or one of the critical questions, for instance, is I-9 forms, if the documents provided have expired or may have expired. So there's a reason not just to put, okay, active after a year, because their I-9 documents may have been not timely. So there's a number of things that you need to think about this. And it's important to have this because it'll make it a lot easier, but there are still factors to consider in keeping an inactive employee on the payroll for a year.
But in line with that, and that's you know, why you need your attorney involved in the procedural part of this and making those evaluations. Tom, you could probably, for an employer who wants to do that, you could probably make a different category that you just click on where they are not inactive, eligible for reactivation automatically, but again, the information's there. You wouldn't have to redo
Yeah,
the
that's
I-9
easy.
if it
I mean,
hasn't
that's
expired.
just an easy drop.
Yeah,
down.
just eligible for rehire is easy.
Right.
And with companies where these crew members come and go, there are a lot of hidden issues with just keeping them on your payroll system. And until they get their final paycheck, they have a potential PAGA violation. So it's important to limit those. And we've seen companies with hundreds of inactive employees. So it is an issue. It's just something you got to work through one way or other. And this
Correct.
system could help you make those decisions easier. But there are some things that you'll need to do to make an inactive active again. And how long do you want to keep people inactive?
And from the way you've described the dashboard, Tom, you know, an HR person could just look up and say, okay, who needs to be, you know, be given a final paycheck, and they can just go through once a week or whatever and just follow through on that. It seems pretty readily. So, Tom, one last question on the employee part. You know, you said there's an employee ID number that we would usually use. Is there any other way to confirm that the employee themselves is doing the entering so that the employee can't complain? I mean, is there a way of entering a password or something? Because, like, you know,
Yes.
you both have said
When they log in, so they're going to have their user ID, and at that point, the user ID can be the password can be the same as the user ID. They can put in their own password. Generally, people that do have work emails, you know, their password will be change M3, and then we recommend that they change the password. And a lot of times when we go to the different locations, we have like a business card, and we put the employee's login ID on there, and then we leave it blank, and we tell them go ahead and, you know, change your password and write that down on there for you.
Yeah, Bruce, that's a good comment. And Tom, I know we've discussed this before. That's an excellent way is for the employee to put, in addition to their employee number, a login password, so that authentication is absolutely, it's kind of boots and suspenders, but it is an important point. I know.
And we have, you know, believe it or not, we've not turned on, and this is you know, again, this could be another lengthy conversation, two-step authentication, which we can have. But the issue becomes, okay, they're going to get a code to type in on their cell phone. You know, do we need to reimburse them for using their cell phone for this two-step authentication? You know, yes or no? I don't know. That's.
Yeah,
I think that one's kind of up in the air
about
still.
$1 a month, probably, if you ran the numbers
Right.
for reimbursement. So there's a smart way to do it, and I think Tom can work through that. It's like
Right.
he's got things in place, such as two-step authentication or
Right.
password or things like that to authenticate.
But you know, a big thing we miss a lot on is employee appraisals, employee warnings. And, you know, we always say when it comes to the wrongful termination lawsuits, you know, you have somebody that's a bad employee. Oh, they're late. I told them he was late. Oh, they're this. I told them that. And then all of a sudden you get mad at the person. You say, fire that person. I want him out of here. So the person gets fired. And then before you know it, you've got a wrongful termination lawsuit. And, you know, I want to make it easy for employers to write up employees. And it's this simple. You got verbal warning. We've got a case management if you really want to sit down and go through it. We've got a written warning. And, you know, you just type in the letters of the employee's name, you click into it. And it's just so simple. Is it attendance? Check. Is it this? Check. You know, what are we going to do? Check. You know, submit it. Manager signs it. Employee signs it. It goes immediately in their documents file, and it's done. This takes minutes to do. And the HR person is looking at this in English, And if it's signed up in Spanish, then it converts all of this into Spanish, except for, what you're writing in. If you're going to write something, then that needs to be translated, but everything else would translate with it. But the whole point is, I think a lot of times we don't, as employers, document these things enough, and it comes back to bite us.
Okay, we have a couple really good questions here. One, can you speak to the app's data encryption compliance with data privacy regulations and overall security? And obviously we're looking at, there's medical files, workers' comp. How do we walk with that?
So as we have a privacy policy, but a lot of times that's custom to the employer, and they have to meet certain criteria for the privacy policy. Is that what we're asking, or?
Well, for instance, if this dashboard, who can look at someone's data here, their medical files, who has access to?
Only the HR administrator. So if I assign that person, so when I do different roles on a particular employee, so, the role can be manager, HR admin, and HR admin would have access to everything. And even if I select HR admin, I can pick HR assistant, and the HR assistant would not be able to see rates of pay and would not be able to see Social Security numbers. But the HR admin would have full access to everything. Managers would not. So if in the documents, we have in here, we upload medical type files in here. When we download the medical files, only the HR administrator is going to be able to look at that.
I just add that's a good question, and I haven't considered it, but I know Carrie's probably considered it. There is the California Privacy Rights Act, and there are certain things when we keep information or we allow others to see that information that the employee needs to know about it. So that's a good question, whoever asked.
Right. Yeah.
But it can be taken care of, definitely.
And we also have, a something that you can store a document. So let's just say, for instance, we did we did an investigation on a sexual harassment case, right? So, within the HR module, there's a couple different options. We could load that into, confidential signed documents, other contracts. So you can build these things out. What's my contract for the staffing agency? What's the uniform rental contract? So I can load these things in there. So I could put that particular harassment training investigation in there. Or I also have the ability in the employees' profiles, if I wanted to go in and I selected the document and put HR private, then the employee wouldn't even have the ability to see that. So, and there might be certain circumstances, somebody wrote a complaint about them and we want to, keep this documentation. It allows you a little bit more flexibility, I think, is what the point of that is. Did you say something?
Confirming, Tom, then you could give a foreman the ability to only look at whether an employee is active, inactive, eligible for rehire, or inactive, and needs to start over. And they would only have access to that.
Right.
And so different people have access to different parts of
They would have access to if I wrote this employee up, if I did a performance review. So it's just like the standard stuff, kind of like basic HR 101, the way it's managed is we have to imagine it's managed electronically now. But we even have we've built in separations. So if we want to terminate employee, and it's again, we've made it really really simple. What's the resignation type? Voluntary, involuntary, layoff, termination for cause. We can send it electronically, paper signature mail. We can email the documents. And, you know, it makes it nice because, okay, I've got somebody that is a no call, no show, and we haven't seen them in a week. And I think I'm going to go off of what Kyle's saying. Okay, do we owe this person any money? No, we don't owe them any money. Well, no call, no show. Let's send the paperwork anyway and say, hey, you know, you voluntarily resigned because you haven't showed up in 5 days. And here's your termination paperwork. And now this employee is terminated. So, you know, we're trying to automate as much as we can. You know, we're working on automating some of the FMLA documentation, and we have all of that in place. So many times I tell employers over and over again, somebody's going to say, oh, I'm going to go take care of my sick grandma. I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. Then it turns into 6 weeks. Then it turns into 3 months. And then all of a sudden you're saying, just get rid of the guy. Oh, okay. Now all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute. I was fired. I was taking care of my sick grandma. She just got really sicker. And you guys never offered me my FMLA or my California, you know, Family First Act. Now you got a problem. Now you got a big problem. So what are we going to do? Here's the document, you know, send them the letter, give them the certification, make sure they fill it out. And if they don't do it and they don't fill it out after 15 days, then they don't qualify for it. Send them a 15-day letter. Hey, you didn't send us any information. You didn't qualify for it. Now you want to terminate the person. It makes it a little bit easier. So these are all of the stuff that we have built into this is for those kind of reasons.
Yeah, I would add the CFRA FMLA leave notice is more than 50% of the time not given, and you're 6 months down the road and you go, oh shoot, the FMLA CFRA leave should have expired after 12 weeks, and it's not because we failed to give notice. I see that time and time again. So those documentations are definitely valuable.
Okay, another question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, Bruce.
Does the employee record keep an audit trail of when they've been marked inactive, terminated, rehired, etc.?
Say that. What was the first part, Bruce?
Does the employee record keep an audit trail? And I think you kind of showed that, Tom, that every
we would be able to
transaction-
pull that data. If you know, the report section of it is something that can be easily built. You know, time off requests, people that enrolled for training video tracker. So there's all these different types of reports we could put in there that should be very, very basic to do that.
Okay, then similar question about an audit trail of changes made to an employee's time. For the example, you know, typical, they forgot to clock out and we manually update the correct clock out time. Is there an audit trail for that and an area to make notes about the change? For instance, you know, we saw the employee never clocked out. We called them, they said, hey, I clocked out at, you know, 3:35 or whatever.
I don't have anybody clocked in or clocked out on this system. So anyway, yes, there is. So let's say I go in, let's say the person forgot to clock out at the end of the day. If they forgot to clock out at the end of the day, the system automatically clocks the person out, sends an email to the supervisor in HR. So then we can correct that entry. And when we correct that entry, then it'll say corrected by so and what the time is. So yes, there's an audit trail.
Okay, and this is going back to the question about data privacy and protection, asking more about a data breach from an outside source.
Yeah, so that's my favorite question. And you know, I've signed up people and I'm always like, God, don't you want to know how we're doing all of this? But again, a lot of this comes from experience on other things that I've been involved with. So we utilize a server, and it's based in San Francisco. It's called Rackspace, which is very popular. We've actually intentionally like crash things and see what would happen and how we would recover. And, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do, surprisingly enough, to not allow clients in the system that you don't want. We actually had somebody that signed up and they're, I'm having trouble logging in. I don't know what the problem is. And we couldn't figure it out. We're like, oh, what's the problem? What's the problem? So he finally told us he was in another country and he was trying to log in through a VPN. So we have it set up that if you're from another country, you're probably not going to be able to log into our system. And if you're utilizing a VPN, you're not going to be able to log into our system unless we approve that. So from a security standpoint, we realize we have some very, very significant data. I mean, you're talking, you know, driver's licenses and social security numbers and addresses and rates of pay. I mean, there's a lot there, and we cannot let you know, the bad guy in. And then, you know, the system backs up every night. So when we do back it up, you know, if somebody tried to do ransomware or anything like that, you know, from the backup that we have, you know, we'd be able to resurface that, you know, in an instant. So I think from a security standpoint, I think I have a document too that I could, you know, share with whoever's interested. From a security standpoint, I think we're probably more solid than a lot of other companies that handle this kind of data.
Good, thanks.
But thank you
Okay,
for
another-
asking that one. I love when people ask that question.
Well, I mean, God, we see it from so many different places.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many, you know, sophisticated companies get have that problem.
Hacked. I know.
Okay, question, what would a clock in, clock out report look like if you wanted to look at an employee?
So individual for the employee or for all the employees or?
Well, why don't you take it both ways? You know, that an HR person could look at, you know, has anybody not clocked out? Did anybody not clock in and out for lunch when they worked full day? I mean,
Yeah, we have those, we have that information, those reports. So if we have employees that are clocking in and out, when they go into this dashboard, they would see all of the entries, who clocked in, who clocked out, who took a lunch. You know, I'd have to get to another screen, you know, of a client that's using it, but you also have a report of people that didn't show up that day. So let's just say, hey, 9 a.m., I'm going to run this report. 6 people aren't here. Are they really not here, or did they clock in? Let me get a hold of the foreman on the job site and see if they did or did not clock in. So we do have that. We do have that available.
okay.
I just, you know, we go through this test app and I think we wiped out our clocking in and clocking out stuff because we were testing something else on it as well.
All right. Well, I think we have, and if you still have questions, obviously enter those in. So why don't you stop sharing your screen, Tom, and I'll go on this one, and we'll walk through. So yeah, talk about this app versus some of the others, Tom.
Well, I mean, so we know there's other companies, a lot of payroll companies have similar things. You know, the issue is they're not going to provide or stand behind a lot of the policies. And then a lot of them will charge per user. And we kind of wanted to stay from the whole per user thing. I like things just to be a little bit more simple because, you know, employees are going to come and go. They're going to be up and down. I mean, that landscaping company we have, they probably have 100 active employees right now, but through the period of a year, they probably went through 350 employees. Their turnover rate is just huge. So, I mean, it's really kind of to me, it's kind of not fair, you know, you got a guy that worked for you for 3 days and all of a sudden, you know, that's part of your bill. So we want to be reasonable when it comes to those types of things. We want to be very, very friendly. And I'll just share one quick story. So there was a client of ours that had an agreement with Cintas, the uniform company. And what ended up happening was they were kind of frustrated, upset with Cintas. They decided to go with Aramark, and they sign up with Aramark, and they get all the uniforms. They tell Cintas, hey, you know, it's been nice working with you, but we decided to move on because of all the issues we had. And Cintas says, no, you know, you got a contract. And they said, no, we don't have a contract. And they said, yeah, you do. It automatically renewed 2.5 years ago. So for you to get out of this deal, it's going to cost you $75,000. And I learned a long time ago in life. So people do business with it because either they want to or they have to. We want to be the company that you do business with because you want to. So we're not telling anybody they've got to sign any kind of long-term contracts. You know, we're a handshake type group here. You know, try us out. If you like it, keep using it, pay us every month. You know, if you have a problem with it, if you don't like it, go ahead and move on, you know, because we feel that our work speaks for itself and stands behind it. We don't need to pin anybody into any long-term contracts. So just one little side note I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of.
All right. And then we want to talk, just confirming, I think you've covered most of this. Talk about your bonus true-up, because I think that's an important thing for people.
Yeah, it's really important because a lot of times people miss it. So I had one company that had employees that work in just an extraordinary amount of overtime. So the bonus was like $1,000. It was this quarterly bonus they were giving their employees. Well, the true-up amount was almost another 1,000. So, you know, the owner was frustrated. He's like, I don't want to get bonuses anymore. I don't want to get tied up in all of this. So in our bonus true-up calculator, we even have kind of like a reverse true up. So if the owner wants to give, you know, $1,000 bonus, and depending on the overtime, you know, maybe the bonus is $250 and the true up $750, or maybe it's $750 and the true up is $250. But either way, you know, you're doing that step and you're going to be covered. So it's easy. People can, you know, import, you know, the employee's, you know, name, ID. We just need to know how many hours they worked in that bonus period, how many overtime hours they worked in that bonus period, what the bonus amount is, and it spits it out automatically. So a lot of people are using that and, you know, importing into their payroll companies.
Yeah, I would just add, this is a very, very important issue for those that do offer non-discretionary bonuses, when in the definition of non-discretionary is very broad. It's in any way based on performance, that you have to go back once you issue that bonus and true up or increase the regular rate of pay for all overtime worked within that year. And that can add up significantly. I know some companies that just pay these bonuses that if you meet certain you know, goals, and they're regularly part of the annual compensation package, that the following year you get this bonus. And it's a kind of a hidden landmine, so to speak, in cases where there's an overtime issue.
All right. I think you've covered most everything there. So we want to talk about how attorney is involved, and I'll talk for just a minute because I do believe, you know, while this, you're going to do a lot of your work with Tom and Angel and his group, having your attorney intersect at several places, including up front, because your procedures is the arbitration agreement, you know, voluntarily signed by the employee. Those kind of things are really important. Updating documents, you know, your annual employee handbook, those things need to be done. Carrie brought up the idea, which I think is a really, really good one, that you could give your attorney access to the dashboard for the key parts, you know, keeping other things private. But where, you know, we talked about for PAGA to qualify for the best credits, taking all reasonable steps. One is doing an audit. And, you know, with no definition of what the audit, how often it has to be, who can do it. Some people are doing it internally, but I just think if your attorney was given the freedom to do a random audit every so many times a year, you're going to catch things that are falling between the cracks. You're going to catch things that, as we know, a minor infraction with labor laws and penalties can just add up so fast. And it also, when you would go before an arbitrator, judge, or attorney to say our audits were done by an independent attorney outside of our firm, that's going to give great credence to it. So, and the other part is, you know, as we talked about in our PAGA reform, your rapid response to claims or requests for payroll, to know what you've got, because with the reforms, if you have your documents and you can gather them quickly, and, you know, as Kyle said earlier, if you can defeat the employee claim, whether they actually suffered the harm or not, or who else was exposed to the same harm they did or the same violation, it's just a great opportunity for your attorney to intersect and can do legal work. You know, with this system, your HR professionals are going to do professional work and not chase paper all day. And your attorneys are going to do legal work for you. So things like reviewing, your exempt salary employees, they can look at those things and just see, are we in compliance? And the system allows you to do that. So Kyle, give us your thoughts from the attorney perspective, because this can give you so much more clear, clean information, and it can be accurate.
Yeah, so one of the first things we do is we check the statute. So we want to know, has that employee worked within the last year or within a year before the actual PAGA notice? If they haven't, they're time barred. So that's one of the first things we look at. And our access to this information would be critical for, you know, kind of giving you a first look. What do we do? We could also look at that employee's payroll documents, if it's a wrongful term case, we can look at any write-ups, FMLA notices, etc. So it is important to have access, but the issue alone on, you know, was there a PAGA violation within the last year? Perhaps this is where this active, inactive, if you go back and the person hasn't really worked for you for a year, you know, that the claim may be time barred, and we could figure that out almost immediately with access to this information. And it would prevent, you know, you from having to, you know, accumulate everything, get it to us. And we often get it in bits and pieces, which we understand why, but this would make it much faster.
All right. 2 questions. Should interested parties reach out to Tom Manzo? Yes, absolutely. You or your attorney, you all got a PDF with his info. And when we're done here, I'll scroll back up to Tom's contact info. Yeah, that'd be great. Tell him you're a Housing Contractors California member and he knows, you know, you're good people. So I hope, you know, many of you certainly take a look at this, because I think its flexibility is one of the, you know, is just so appealing that everybody can get what they want and what they need as they go through this. Another one, Tom, we currently use QuickBooks for HR and payroll entry. Can this be combined or interfaced with QuickBooks, or would they need to use a different payroll platform?
Well, they could use QuickBooks for the payroll platform, and we could, you know, intertwine some of that stuff for sure.
Okay, so yeah, again, contact Kavya for piece rate and bonus plans. For those who want to do that, why don't you contact me, see if we can get members of your trade together. I think that just makes a lot of sense and makes the development costs so much easier. And then, you know, one of the things we can do for those that are joining this program, like you said, Tom has a lot of training videos. You know, you might have some specialty ones that are great, and we can be sharing those things. We don't have to recreate the wheels for that.
No, not at all.
So any last questions, or I'll go back to, there is Tom's contact info. And Tom, where was that picture? Was that in DC?
Yeah, Washington DC. Mike Saltzman liked it, but that's, so you put it
Yeah.
on the website.
I was there with Tom. We marched on the Capitol when they did the Viking River Cruises Supreme Court hearing. So that's a great picture, Tom.
Thanks.
All right. Any last questions anybody has? Hopefully, for some of you, this could really be an effective thing. We just think with PAGA reform, with labor law where it's going, and again, even Cal OSHA training citations, this could really make a difference there. There's just so much potential here. We strongly suggest people check it out and see if it can work for you. All right. Well, Tom and Angel, Kyle, thanks. And hope everybody has a great 2025. This is our first webinar of the year. So thanks for joining, and look forward to moving forward here.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Bruce.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Have a good one.